It's our life.
Hi there, it is 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, so we all know what that means. Another episode of Behind Breaking Bond. Joining me is
Andy Kahn, Director of Victim Services with Massive Crime Stoppers of Houston.
And this gentleman here.
Ray Hunt with the Houston Police Officers Union.
You're obviously watching this because you care about this particular subject. We've been doing this for more than a year now, and obviously, I think we can all agree that crime is on the increase here in Houston and Harris County because of repeat violent offenders free on multiple felony bonds.
Are we offering a prize today if you can guess our combined ages? Which, by the way, equals my bowling average. So that's a clue for you right there.
I would say you're the youngest. No, but I mean, wouldn't you agree? I mean, what are cops on the street seeing with this?
Extremely frustrated. Know when they arrest somebody, they're going to be out on multiple bonds. It used to be when you found out something like this, you were shocked. We're not shocked about it anymore because every single time it happens, you know what you're going to hear. Multiple bonds. You hear people on the radio talking about when somebody's arrested. I promise you, when we find out this person's been arrested multiple times, they're probably on multiple bonds. The sad thing is, when they finally get to trials, what you'll probably do is all those things that they've done will be stacked in the
Right. Yeah.
So all the stuff that they've been doing, they get away with.
Yeah, and then two, you've got to wonder how many people, I mean, many times now we see that these people become wanted fugitives. They decide, well, I'm not going to go back to
Which makes it more dangerous for us when we try to apprehend them because they know what's going to happen and they
I can't imagine how frustrating that must be
Right.
for a police officer.
Well, I was thinking about that before we started. If it's this frustrating for us, think about the victims that find out about this after they've been robbed or raped or whatever it is, to hear that this person shouldn't have even been out.
Right.
This person should have been in prison serving a 15 or 20-year prison sentence for the previous robbery they did whenever they got on bond for this one.
And you got to wonder too, is a defendant that, let's say that they're told you can't, it's a domestic violence situation, you can't go see so-and-so or you stay away from so-and-so. If they're not abiding by the terms of their bond, what would make anybody think that they're going to abide by that?
They're not going to obey their bond. They're things in their bond. They're not going to do it. First thing, they can't own a weapon. That's the first thing they get when they get out because they got to continue their job. They're not, these folks are not getting out of jail and going to get a regular job in order to pay their bonds or ongoing bonds or whatever. These people are getting out and going back to the only work they know, which is robbing, raping, stealing, etc.
You brought up an interesting point because we see this a lot, don't we, where defendants will have multiple bonds for felon in possession of a weapon.
Exactly. And that's what we're actually going to be looking at this evening on Breaking Bond. And we're actually going to start breaking down defendants on my list, which I'm up to 174 people now that have been murdered by a defendant allegedly on multiple felony bonds or felony PR get out of jail free card, or they were a bond and their bond was forfeited and they became a fugitive. But a lot of them had previously been convicted of felon in possession of a firearm, or they were out on multiple bonds for felon in possession of a firearm.
It's almost like some judges see felon in possession of a weapon, and it means it's like, well, that ain't no big deal, right?
Over 30 years ago, Andy and I both were parole officers. Andy was a hearing officer, actually get people back in prison whenever they get arrested for an offense. Back then, if you got somebody who was a felon in possession of a firearm, real quickly, their parole was going to be revoked and they're going to be sent back to TDC.
And right, and that's a huge red flag, right? I mean, if you got somebody they've already been convicted of a felony crime and they have a gun, which they should not have, why do they need a gun, right?
To go back to their job.
Not only that, but you have little, if any, outrage over the amount of defendants who were charged with felon in possession of a prohibited weapon, a firearm, who were then out on bond, who were then charged with additional crime. And you and I know, Ray, that additional crime should have never ever happened because they shouldn't have been out to begin with. So if you really want to get serious about reducing crime in Harris County, keep the offenders who keep getting charged with felon in possession of a weapon in custody.
And I can understand one. Okay, you get one felon, okay, I'll give you a bond for that. But then a month or two later, get another one. I mean, you've seen people with a bunch of them, right? Yeah.
I promise you, crime would immediately start going down in Harris County if every felon in possession of a firearm who's already out on bond gets a no bond or $1 million bond. Immediately, crime will start going down. It's the same 5% doing all the crime.
Right. Yeah.
When you start locking those people up, that's when the crime's going to go down. Until that happens, it ain't going down.
Or as I like to say, in one of the cases that we're going to be featuring tonight, he got a 6-year sentence for ag robbery with a deadly weapon in 2013. So between 2013 and 2019, guess what he wasn't able to do? Commit crimes. Now in 2020, when he gets out, boom, we're back.
You see that whenever you research somebody, right? It's like if you see a period, there's 4 years, 6 years, there's nothing. You look a little farther and you see, well, they were in prison. That's why they weren't picking up new crimes.
They did something in Montgomery County. He got his prison sentence and sent to prison.
Yeah, right. Exactly. One thing that we keep impressing on people, if you really want to see it change, you got to get out and vote. Correct?
You do. You got to change this one.
And one thing I got to say, even with last week's runoff, people are paying attention, and they're going to the polls, and they're not looking at it from a Democrat-Republican standpoint. They're looking at it as far as the judges that continuously allow these people out. They're voting them out of office because they see that as a huge problem.
And Ray, you'll probably agree with this. Back when we were doing stuff, and back when you were a police officer and I was doing my stuff, there used to be an adage in Harris County. It was called one bond per customer.
Yeah.
Remember, you were out on bond and you were charged with additional crime, which is an obvious violation of your bond, especially a felony. You were getting back out again.
It's even worse today, as you know, because if you're out on bond and you fail to appear for your bond hearing, they're just resetting it for another day.
Right.
Nobody's paying any money.
Yeah.
Nobody's having to go to mom or dad and say, hey, get me out again. They don't have to do it. They just reset it because they want it to look like that it's working, and it's not working.
Right.
Every person who's been a victim knows it's not working.
The crazy thing, and the point you brought up, all of it, if you just look on court documents, it's like it's simple, right? It's like you can tell that, okay, the minute so-and-so gets out, something bad's going to happen.
Let me tell you what's going to happen with all these back cases that we have right now. They're going to have no choice but to say, hey, okay, you got 5 aggravated robberies. We'll dismiss 4 of them, take 4 years on this one, and we'll be done. That's 4 victims that got nothing out there.
Right. Well, and that there are defense attorneys that they're taking advantage of the fact that the big backlog. No, we'll wait, and the offer will be better. The offer will be better, and more than likely it will.
It will be. They have no choice.
The last HPD officer that was murdered by a guy out on multiple bonds, that was William Jeffers, was it?
Jeffries.
Right. And so the guy out that ended up being killed himself, he was on multiple felony bonds and of course forfeited the bonds. And he had a warrant out for his arrest, which they were trying to serve. Randy and I, we did a story in which we documented probably at least 10 cases involving defendants on multiple felony bonds who forfeited their bonds, who ended up in shootouts with law enforcement. 2 of the defendants ended up getting killed themselves in shootouts.
You all have got to be seeing that more, right? Because these people are desperate, right?
They are.
Yeah.
They have nothing to lose but to shoot out with us now. There's nothing to lose. Even if they get charged with even if you get charged with capital murder, there's a very good chance that you're getting out on bond.
Right.
We got 40-something, 50-something.
We've seen that,
We got
yes.
over 110 defendants.
Which
on
makes
bond
no sense at all.
On capital murder?
Yeah.
in Harris County, which used to be unheard of.
Right.
It was, in the way we know it was unheard of, because you and I said, have we ever done a story on a guy out on bond for capital murder? And I look around, no, never have, because it never happened before until a few years ago.
And judges can still say no to that too.
Yeah.
They have the power to say capital murder, you get no bond.
Remember, a capital murder, a person who's convicted of capital murder is getting life or death.
Right.
They have nothing to lose if they're out there and have to get out and shoot
Yeah.
out. Nothing to lose.
Right, it makes no sense to even give them the opportunity to bond out of jail.
If
None
you're
of them
out
going to
on
work.
bond,
Right.
if you're on bond for capital murder, and let's just say 3 years later, state says we're finally ready to go to trial, are you seriously going to even show up?
Right.
I mean, I'd be going, why would I? I'll take my chances. Find me, catch me if you can.
You're exactly right.
Well, and I think it's going to get that way too. If you have a defendant that has 12, 14 charges, they're out on that many bonds, they're even thinking, once I go back, I'm never going to see the light of day.
I promise you, there's people who just heard you say that think that's an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration.
Right.
It's reality in Harris County.
Yeah, I mean, come on, up until like 2019, have you ever heard of somebody that had 6, 7, 8, 12 bonds? It was unheard of.
There's no bonding. There's no bonding.
Right. I mean, it's like, and again, we are talking about violent crimes. We're talking about people that run around with guns and rob people and shoot people and kill people. We're not talking about somebody that stole something from Target. Those people should not be sitting in jail until they go to trial for a theft charge, something that's not violent. That's totally understandable. And they should be able to get a PR bond on a misdemeanor. This is a whole other thing, an entirely different.
No, and we did the story last week on a guy that was charged with a violent offense, yet somehow got a PR bond with assault with intent to impede breathing, which
Yes.
as far as I know is considered a violent offense. So even though we did pass that law, Senate Bill 6, which went into effect in December of 21, in February 22, the 351st District Court still saw fit to give a PR bond on a defendant who had multiple prior felony convictions as well. So
That's what you're.
And that's what we found. That's what we found. So you have to wonder how many other ones are out there where judges are just ignoring it and still giving PR bonds for violent offenses, even though the statute changed, correct?
you're absolutely right. And I'll give little props to Crime Stoppers, because as far as I know, we're the only entity in the country that's actually collecting data on defendants, particularly charged with murder, because I'm just the only one doing it. I can keep up with the murder. I'm up 174 people now who have been murdered by a defendant on those categories.
That you could easily make the
That's gonna
argument.
be more.
Right, that's that we know of, and you could easily make the argument that that's 174 Harris County residents who should be alive today. If their alleged killer was out on multiple bonds, if that would not have happened, they'd be alive.
I can't imagine what the numbers would be like for other offenses, particularly ag robbery. Can you imagine?
That's gonna be the frequent flyers, no
Yes.
doubt about it. Anybody who's out there doing aggravated robberies, and aggravated robbery is basically robbing somebody with a gun, knife, causes a serious bodily injury. That is a serious offense, this close to killing somebody,
Right.
basically.
And look how often it does turn into a murder.
That's their job.
Yeah.
That's their only job, is to rob people.
Something goes bad, they pull the trigger, and you've got a homicide.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The catalytic converter is the same thing. The
Yeah.
catalytic converter thefts, we know now, based on the deputy that was killed, that you gotta be careful encountering somebody stealing your catalytic converter, because there's somebody else watching who's willing to pull the trigger and kill you, because they're probably on bond as well.
Right, and that's a crime that has touched so many people.
Everybody out there knows somebody. who's watching.
Right, yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to would it hadn't happened to me, but that's got to be awful to go through.
This is what yesterday, there was a police chase in Brazos County a couple of days ago on Bryan College Station, a manhunt. One of the defendants now charged with stealing catalytic converters. He got 6 years, 2013, for ag robbery with a deadly weapon. And remained crime-free until when he got out. He was charged with felon in possession of a weapon. He bonded out April of 20. Convicted of criminal trespass while on bond and didn't do anything to his bond. Then he's charged with assault with intent to impede breathing, strangling someone, and it was once again allowed to bond out August of 20. So now you're on a felony bond for felon in possession of a firearm, April of 20. Now you're on bond for assault with intent to impede breathing, August of 20, and it gets worse. He's then charged with assault of a public servant, a police officer, post bond again in November of 20. So all this happens, 3 felony offenses, all violent offenses, since April of 20. He then has his bond forfeited in May of 21. Whereabouts unknown. He's then taken into custody for evading arrest. They reinstate his bond. So
What
now
kind of sense does that make?
and he bonds out on the evading arrest. So now we're on 3 felony bonds and evading arrest, and now you got a police manhunt that occurs in Brazos County for stealing catalytic converters, which is, as we all know, is a violent crime waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Because we've seen this. Should any of this happen?
And Andy, all that list that you read, those are the ones we caught him at.
Right,
Just think about that.
yes,
You're talking about
yes.
10% of the ones where he's probably got 90% more than we have caught.
Right.
So I'm just like, you want to know why crime is on the rise in Harris County? You just look at the courthouse. It's the revolving door that we've seen time and time again. In conjunction with HPD and the district attorney's office, we brought this to the public's attention in October of 2019. We saw what was happening, and this was well before you ever heard the term COVID. This was happening before COVID. COVID became kind of an easy, convenient excuse for everybody to blame.
Oh, we probably did dozens of stories on it before COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, easily, yeah. I mean, it just, you got the power to change it, folks. You really do. You have the power to vote and get new judges in there. And this is not a question of being a Democrat or Republican. It's let's get a judges in there that aren't going to look at it like they want to reform the criminal justice system. That's not a judge's job, right? Or to be sort of decide that, well, we'll rehabilitate everybody. Well, some people, the person you just described is not going to be rehabilitated.
6, 8, 12 bonds, those people are not going to be real.
Right.
You remember the story we did, and you guys, I know the union was on it. The guy that had like 12 aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon charges at convenience stores. And we're sitting there, we're doing this. We're going, well, first of all, dude, you're not very good at this.
And he go the same one.
Right. Second, in order to rack up 12 charges, you got to be out here to do it.
Right.
You got to have help from someone because you got to be continually spit out time and time again. And I remember one of the judges was asked, not by your station, by the way, but
they won't talk to me.
and they said, when is enough is enough? And the judge said, I don't have the luxury of saying enough is enough. I have to grant them a bond, and I can't make it punitive in nature, no matter how many times they're charged with an offense. And I was saying that's exactly why we're in this position.
And why could the Constitution didn't change? Why were judges able to do it for all these years? Why could a judge say, you know what, Randy Wallace, you're out on 2 bonds. I'm tired of seeing you. You're going to sit in jail till you go to trial. That's the way it was.
Absolutely, and the way it should be, and still allowed to do that. I talked to one of our very good senators here in Houston, a former prosecutor, former judge. She's like, absolutely, those people can be no bonded. Absolutely, those people can get $1 million bonds. There's nothing that prohibits them from doing that. All they have to do is show that this person is a continued threat. You've got multiple times that we've given you the chance to do this. You've done it wrong every time. Yes, they can be no bonded. And, back to your point about the guy that's got 10 or 12 aggravated robberies. Each time we arrest that person, we're taking that gun away from him and tagging him. He's getting another one. Guess where he's getting it from? He's breaking in your house. He's breaking in your car. He's not going to Carter's Country and purchasing it.
Right.
So you've got other crimes on top of what he's already doing that this person's also committed.
I love what you said a minute ago because it's so true. It's whenever you look at these defendants, it's what they're charged with. They've probably committed 3 times or more. Yeah.
Yeah, we're one of the few stations that actually puts all that out when somebody's arrested. We all know it, but rarely do you hear that. And I'm telling you, my hat's off to both y'all and Crime Stoppers for everything y'all are doing to expose what's going on in Harris County. And it is a major, major problem. It's only going to get worse. And I'm telling you that all these stacked charges, most of them are going to be dismissed, and one of them is going to be charged. There's nothing else they can do because of the backlog.
And we keep harping about it, and we keep doing breaking bond because it's a matter of public safety. That bottom line, right?
It is.
I mean, this guy here, this is the 3rd time I have taken an issue, public safety. First it was they just let everybody out of prison, in the late 80s, early 90s, let everybody out of prison, right? Remember that? It was like everybody was on parole, basically.
8 out of every 10 parole parole eligible inmate was being released. It didn't matter what your status was. If you were eligible, you're coming out.
And they would dump them off at the Greyhound station downtown, wouldn't they?
Yes.
What was supposed to happen, you were supposed to go to your county of conviction. Well, we became like, all the parolees wanted to be here. So yeah, all the crimes were being committed by people that were serving what? A 40-year sentence in a matter of 5 or 6 years?
One of the catalysts for me ending up where I am now, and Ray, you'll know this case very well, was Jim Irby.
Yeah.
The guy that was finally now executed, Carl Wayne Bunchen, who did 13 months on a 15-year sentence, had at least 7 prior convictions, felony convictions. Most of them was a sex offender as well, was sex assault of a child. Was supposed to go to a halfway house, never showed up, and nobody did anything. And when Jim pulled him over, Bunchen, rightfully so, thought he was a wanted fugitive.
Yeah.
And that's how he ended
a
up.
bunch of just a passenger.
Yeah, correct. And so that's kind of where all this, so I'm seeing it full cycle from where we were 30 some odd years ago, where you had the prison overcrowding that was contributing to the crime problem. Now you have the courts.
And that became, back when it was in prisons, that became a big political issue. A lot of people would say that's what got Governor Ann Richards elected, right? I mean,
Richards had prison expansion.
Yeah, I mean, she built all these prisons all over the state, and all of a sudden, people weren't serving 40-year sentences in 4 years anymore, right?
Correct.
And then the next thing that came along was mandatory release, where they had this crazy, what was it? You got 3 days.
3 years for 1 year.
Yeah, it was like you got good time, and it didn't mean you had to be good in prison. You just got it. If you were in there breathing, you got good time, right? And we were seeing dangerous people walking out of prison. And then it was Bush. When George W. became the governor, he couldn't make it retroactive, but he stopped it, right?
Yeah, we were able to abolish mandatory release. We couldn't do it for those that were currently grandfathered in.
Right.
But we did in 1996 stop people from actually getting out.
But my whole point of this is they all became political, right? They all became political issues. But when you looked at the problem and why we spent so much time on it, it was a matter of public safety. The public was.
And Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, but we saw a dramatic reduction in crime for a long time. Decades, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
From probably 95 till 2017 or something.
When you lock the bad guys up, you're going to have a decrease in crime.
Yeah.
It's just common sense.
Right.
It's not everybody doing the crime. It's not the 5%ers.
Yeah, I've said this so many times. My true belief is that the majority of people out there, they're good people. They want to live their life. They're not going to hurt anybody. They don't want to commit a crime. But you've got a small segment of society that's what they're going to do. And it's not because it could be because they're addicted to drugs or they have a mental issue, but a lot of times they're just mean, and that's what they do every day.
They are evil people.
Right.
Bunchen, he brought up Bunchen. Bunchen's brother was killed in a police shootout years before he got killed.
Yeah.
Years before he killed Irby.
Right.
They claimed that was retaliation is what he was doing. He just wanted to kill a police officer. Those are just evil people.
Yeah.
And they're out there.
Yes.
Anybody who does the kind of things like this 18-year-old punk did in Uvalde, or anybody who goes and robs somebody, that's
and I
evil
think
folks.
that brings up the point why we have to start seriously looking at defendants who are charged with felon in possession of a weapon, i.e. a firearm.
Right.
Because trust me, there are hundreds, if not thousands, that are out on bond. And those who have prior convictions as well, we keep putting them back out on the street.
If both parties were standing up right now saying any felon in possession of a firearm gets no bonded immediately, and they started saying that our $1 million bond, crime would immediately go down.
Oh, no doubt.
They're the ones that are doing the crimes.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, you hear so much about gun control. A felon should not have a gun. I think everybody could agree on that. And if you're arrested and you've got this criminal history, you don't need a gun, and you should be behind bars with no bond set until you go to trial.
It's going to be interesting to see how that proceeds.
Right. And you would think that people would be outraged about that. The people that are watching this, point that out to Go on social media and talk about that. Point that out to people, because we've talked about this before too. You know, people, you live your life and, you know, you don't know all the stuff about the criminal justice system, but that's an issue. Defendants walking around with a charge of felon in possession of a weapon, that should not be happening.
No, we're going to discuss that on tonight's what?
Tonight's Breaking Bond. Hey, thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And be sure to watch Breaking Bond on Fox 26 News at 9.